September 19th Board of Director meeting, and we are reconvening to open session and reporting out of closed session at 7:35. Nothing to report out except one correction, that the government code that we have stated for the closed session is incorrect, and it needs to read 54956.9B3.
If I could just briefly set the stage. Dennis Timoney is here with our Special Districts Risk Management Association. They have done, authority. And they do a wonderful job with respect to providing services to the district. And one of the topics that becomes very challenging from time to time is an understanding of board and staff responsibilities. And sometimes the public doesn't understand what those roles are and how this process works. So it is an opportunity for Dennis to go ahead and provide information that I think is extremely beneficial and will allow conversation accordingly, questions, answers. Thank you. Do you need this mic? You're sitting or standing?
No, I just feel like Daniel in the lion's den, but hey, they pay you the big bucks.
Here you go.
That's okay. I think I can project. As Mary said, I'm Dennis Timoney with the Special District Risk Management Authority. We provide the risk financing for the district. SDRMA is a joint powers authority. We are a public agency in the state of California, just like the district, and follow all the rules and regulations of the Brown Act. And so one of my roles as Chief Risk Officer is interacting with our members, assisting them on risk management issues. And as Mary indicated, a lot of issues now revolve around board and staff interaction and where that, what the role is and what the defining lines are. And so I was up here last December 6th, in fact, and gave a full presentation to the board at that time. So I didn't want to take up too much time, but I just wanted to address some specific things. So I was listening to conversation today about the board's role, staff's role, and how each one interact. And a lot of this, in fact, all of it is in the government code. And so this is statutory language on how the board is formed, how the board interacts, what the board can and can't do. And so one specific issue we could talk about that was brought up tonight about limiting time to speak. And Mary and I did discuss this. The issue there is not a restriction of free speech. The issue there is this district has business on its plate, and the district needs to move forward. And so I've dealt with several districts where meetings are going on until 1 or 2 in the morning. That's not productive. So the most common sense thing to do is to limit that time so as many members of the public want to come in and speak, they have that opportunity. No one monopolizes a meeting, and then just as you saw here tonight, the board can extend that time. But again, everything is done by board action. It's not one individual. When the contract's approved, it's a board action. To single out any single individual is just wrong. It's a board action. The board owns it. The board has to live and die by that. If you don't feel the board's doing their job, vote them out of office. That is your role. However, for the board creates the policy. The board creates, and the government code, it says, the board of directors shall act only by ordinance, resolution, or motion. So when a board member, another example was given about a discussion that took place in Applebee's. My understanding was this was actually 2 members of the board acting in their official duties as board members because they were created as a subcommittee to discuss the general manager's contract. A perfectly legitimate reason for those 2 board members to meet. The Brown Act does not restrict those board members to the confines of this office. They can take it out. Again, they have working lives. Applebee's was a convenient location to meet. Any statement they made in that meeting is privileged as a matter of law. I would suggest it's somewhat offensive that members of the public are trying to overhear what's going on. Instead of allowing board members...
Can you let Dennis, please?
Because what happens is committee members will make a recommendation to the full board. That goes to the agenda. That is the public's time to come in and address those concerns. There's a process, and that's what the Brown Act talks about. The Brown Act and free speech, the First Amendment, are two separate issues. To come in here and limit public comment to 3 minutes is not a violation of anybody's free speech. Why are you doing this? You don't believe me?
I do believe you. I know the Brown Act.
Okay.
I don't believe what you said prior to that. I'd like
What?
to talk to you later about that.
Okay, that's fine.
In discussing residents.
Whoa, sir, I'm still talking.
Yeah.
Remember? My time.
Dennis,
Hold on.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you want to make it interactive, or do you?
No,
want to-
I'll wait till, I just want to get some points out here, then we
Thank
can
you.
make it interactive.
So
the issue
presentation,
with-
then interactive.
So the issue with the Brown Act about the board sets the policy, okay? Once that policy is created, by law, they have to hire a general manager. No board member can act in that role of a general manager. The government code is specific on that. The board creates the policy, gives that policy to the general manager, and the general manager is responsible for fulfilling those duties based upon the policy created by the board. So if there's an issue with a policy, it's a board policy, therefore the board has to accept, again, the board has to accept responsibility for that policy. It's not the general manager. She's only acting within the scope of her authority granted to her or him by the board. Okay? So it's very specific that, again, the board created the policy. The board manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations of this agency under Government Code Section 61051. The general manager shall be responsible for all the following: the implementation of the policies established by the board of directors for the operation of the district, the appointment, supervision, discipline, and dismissal of district employees consistent with the employee relations system established by the board of directors, the supervision of the district's facilities and services, and the supervision of the district's finances. Those are the duties of a general manager that are statutorily created. The board then, when it creates the policy, can define it and shape it to whatever means the board wants to. So in this case, board gives Mary authorization to create a budget. She makes that budget. I believe there's a finance subcommittee that goes through it. But again, everything always flows back to the board. Mary has no unilateral authority to engage or spend district funds unless it's expressly authorized within the board budget and approved by the board. So there's the give and take here. It's not necessarily unilateral, someone not doing something or moving their own agenda. So I've been associated with district in one way or another for over 10 years. And I would tell you right now, and I would submit this is my own personal opinion. You can call me later and yell at me. I see this board as evolving. It's under tremendous pressure. And I think the fact that they're still sitting up here is a great service to their commitment to public service. Are they perfect? No. I don't know there's a political system today that's perfect, warts and all. But this works. Your ability to stand up here and criticize them is a demonstration that it works. The fact that they have to sit there and take it is a demonstration that the system is working. You may not like it. What is your alternative? Don't vote for it. You should run yourself up for election then, and you should take their spot. But there's a lot of time taken out of their personal lives to ensure this district is running properly. I mean, you can nod your head. I appreciate that. That's your personal opinion. But I think in counseling with Mary and with the board, everything we're trying to do is in the confines of the government code. And so I've been called on to assist the district in several situations, and I think we've worked together for the betterment of this district and for the public here. Time will tell, but I think what we're trying to do here is live by the letter. As I've spoken to the board several times, transparency is the key. And as a member of the public brought up, that's absolutely correct. The public has an absolute right to know, and you are exactly correct on that, on anything from the financials, things like that. But once the budget is passed, that's the budget. And budgets ebb and flow. So at any point in time, you could be over or under, but the measure of performance is where are you on 6/30 when that budget comes due. So to stop and say, oh, here we are on September 19th, and the budget is over or under, that's only for this point in time, but this is an entire 12-month fiscal year budget. It's up to the board, again, as their right to measure the performance of the general manager. They may elect to look at that. But remember, it's a moving target. Just because where you are on September 19th may not necessarily mean the general manager is performing to expectations or not performing to expectations. At the end of the day, it's going to be at 6:30. Here's where the budget, we gave you a budget, your dollars expenditure was supposed to be X. Either you're above or you're below. And that's the measure of performance. So the issue here is I've been working with the board to get a very broader sense of the interaction between board, not to get bored, and they would all, I think, you would agree with me. I try to keep the board out of operations. Why? Because the government code says the general manager runs the district. We want to keep the board. Board has the big vision. Where is this district going based upon the wishes of you, as the constituents? You bring the big message to the board, then the board has to take that in an agenda item and say, yes, this is a commitment we want to make. Once the board makes that motion and passes that motion, it's now a board action, and then it empowers the general manager to move forward, backwards, sideways at the board's direction. But it has to be a collaborative effort. It's not one single individual. It's a collaborative effort of staff, of the board, and of the public. It's a three-legged stool. You all need to be working together to support each other. Because if you take one leg out of that three-legged stool, or it's not even, we're off kilter. So it's meeting consensus to say we need to work together. Name calling, signs, don't move the district forward. It keeps it in this adversarial react. It's your absolute right to do it. But again, the board has issues that it has to move forward on. And part of the Brown Act, if you read it, the board can set on how they want the procedures to go. If actions become disruptive, the board can take action to remove that disruption, again, in order to conduct the people's business. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Yes, I do. Thank you. We will get to what the board can do so far as science is concerned, sir. We will get to that, but I would like to suggest this, and I have a question. You're right. The board owns it. You bet they do.
Right.
You bet they own it. They own her and every one of her mistakes. They own her budget. They own her contract. All five of them, or the four of them that voted for her, own it. We know that. I don't know why you thought we didn't. But here's a question I have. You say she can't act unilaterally. It's got to be voted on by the board.
No. I said she is given a policy.
Okay, no. Sir, this is my time. You have your time. My time.
No, this is the interactive part.
No. Let me get my point out, sir.
Okay, get your point.
Thank you. And I'll do it in my time and fashion, sir. Thank you. Last month, there was a sheriff at this meeting. Did the board vote to have the sheriff, or did the general manager and one board member decide to spend money unilaterally? Our president didn't know that sheriff was going to be here. She didn't get a vote on it. Mary and I believe Alan Clark decided that for the board and the community service district on their own. So, no, there's no collaboration here, sir. There's no transparency here.
Can I make one point?
Please, go ahead.
Okay, Government Code Section 61051. The general manager shall be responsible for all the following: the supervision of the district's facilities. That falls within her job duties.
Yeah, that's a big stretch.
That's not a stretch.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. Let me address your point.
Address away.
If the lights went out tomorrow, who's responsible for that?
PG&E.
The general manager. If the pool remains locked, sir, everything that goes on here is the responsibility of the general manager. Responsibility of the general manager. If she felt there was a potential threat to the public, or to board members, or to staff, she has a perfectly legitimate reason to call the sheriffs here. In this day and age, you cannot take any threat lightly. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in today. And for someone to make a statement, even if you address your statement...
What was the threat? What was the threat? Mary, what was the threat?
Whoa.
What was the threat?
It's a perceived threat.
Okay.
What was perceived?
What was the perception?
That someone was getting so
We spent over
upset.
$500. What was the perceived threat that caused us to do it? And why is he not here
Because
tonight?
I've been here at other meetings when there's been shouting, there's been signs waving, board members have been accosted.
Free speech.
No, sir, it's not a free speech if someone perceives they're being physically threatened. They have a right to seek protection. Mary's duty as a public official is to ensure the safety of everybody in the room.
I want to hear
For
about
the staff, public members, the board, she has that affirmative duty. If something went wrong here and there was somebody injured, who do you think is going to be held responsible? The district. That's why we have court
What
laws.
was the threat?
Okay,
What?
hold on. Yes. Barbara Rogers. Mr. Timoney, I know the Brown Act. I carry
I have
it
that
with
book
me,
too.
and I know the government code. We know that this board is responsible, sir. I know that more than anybody. The thing about Applebee's, I'm going to take offense at what you said about it. Nobody was deliberately eavesdropping. These people do not come to the meetings. They just happened to overhear two board members speaking my name, I believe Mr. Lillipop's name, and that was about, no one accused anybody of having a covert meeting. I don't know what was translated to you, but when I'm looking at you and telling you I tell the truth, I tell the truth. Okay? Now this is a small community. I know there's nothing wrong with two board members having dinner together or lunch together, and I know that. I worked 27 years for the fire department, started out in the city of Placerville, so I know. No one ever said anything about Mr. Timoney. I don't know what was conveyed to you. I've heard really good things about you from other prior people that worked here, so I'm going to hold you a little bit of respect, but I think you were a little confrontational, like to me. I didn't appreciate the way you came at me because I was shaking my head. So I'm trying to explain to you. It isn't always us, or especially not me. Sometimes the confrontation is coming from that side of the table, sir. And you're not here at these meetings. Most of these people aren't here at the meetings. It's the signs were here. You know what the Board of Supervisors told me? We never would have even acknowledged the signs were in the room. We just would have ignored them. You have a little decorum. You just go on with your business. You ignore them. But no, that is not what happened that night, sir. One of the board members really got out of hand about it. And I mean it. You ought to listen to the tapes and you'll get the whole story. Have I made mistakes in the past? You bet I have. And Bob, Mr. Biegler knows that. And I paid dearly for it. And I've never done it before. And we've talked about it and we're all good. You're right. This board has come a long ways. But we do ask for transparency, sir. And in the 6 years I've been coming here, it wasn't until Fred got here and then continued with Mary and Denise that we really knew what our budget was, Mr. Timoney. I don't think you live in Cameron Park, do you?
No, I do not.
So maybe if you did live here, you might appreciate that this community or this agency is in much trouble as all the other agencies in the state of California, sir. And that is my main purpose here, is my budget and my fire department. So if people want to maybe relay stories onto you that I don't think are totally true, maybe, you know, and I really feel like I'm in kindergarten here. Why should you be here explaining to us when all of them up there ought to know what's going on? They all, you know what? Read the Brown Act, I told them. Go to Brown Act school. Talk to other people. No, they don't. Greg knows. Greg knows, Sheba knows. Alan, he knows, but sometimes Alan's it's slighted, you know, but he knows. I don't think Scott knows, and I don't think that Sean knows. But if you're going to run for office, then you ought to educate
Absolutely.
yourself, just like I do. I've been retired for 7 years. You know, I come to all the meetings. I'm just not a fly-by-night person. I come to all the meetings. You know, I'm here for one purpose. But this shouldn't even be like this here tonight, sir.
Absolutely, I agree.
I mean, I'm sure you would rather be home. Probably not football night. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Everything you're hearing, Mr. Timoney, is not the truth. All the actions is not on this side of the audience. There has been threats made by board members. There has been aggressive actions by board members. There has been aggressive actions by their friends. What they do is, some of them, is they pack the room with their buddies. And if they can't get us in here, they get us in the newspaper with letters. This is a very sad scenario. Do they have a job to do? You bet they do. Are they doing their job? They're not doing their job. 2 years we've had a new board seated. They're not doing their job. I should have to stand here and tell them, like a Jewish mother, you guys are going to run out of money. They're not listening to me. But I'm going to look at their budget. I'm sure you know budgets. Look at their budget. They're running out of money. The piggy bank is dry. They're draining our fire department of every dime they have. Are they within their rights, general fund? Absolutely. Like I said, I started off at the city of Placerville. I understand the concept. But you know what they're not living by, Mr. Timothy? The master plan that they put in place. Not this board, but the prior board. They're not living by the master plan. They're not putting away money for new engines. They're not putting money away for needed maintenance. So you know what's going to happen? Someday we're going to have a huge fire. Their first run engines are going to go out. Then we're going to have another fire. Their second engines are going to go out. We're going to have something else, and guess what? The third engines aren't going to roll out of the barn. So is my house going to burn down, or anybody else? Yeah, that's what's going to happen here. And why? Because this board and this agency is not responsible with my tax dollars. So, you know, like I say, this is what's going on here. They want to shut us up. They want to shut us up about the budget. They want to shut us up. They do not want the community to know it. This agency has not been transparent for years. I can show you that all the way from day one on this community center, where the committees and the board knew that this committee, they could not afford this without a Melrose. Alan Clark knows that, but he won't answer that. And the prior boards wouldn't. You know what I got told by Dave Johnson one time? We know what we're doing. In other words, sit down and shut up. Yeah.
I remember Dave.
Yeah. Because you know why? They don't want to tell the truth to this community. They knew that this center, that this community did not have the money to support this community center. They did a practice exercise, and the numbers were, they go, we can't let the public know this. Am I blaming Mary? Heck no, I'm not blaming Mary. Am I blaming these new board members? Heck no, I'm not blaming them. But I'm telling them, we are spending more than we have, people. This is why I'm here, and I want you to know that. And not everything you're hearing is the truth. And I mean that, Mr. Timmy. I'd love to talk to you. Sure, you can't, but you should work for them. But, you know, I'm just telling you,
but I think
it is not the truth. What you're hearing, everything, is not the truth. What happened at Applebee's, however it was said to you, was not the truth. I mean, if I was sitting there, they would have moved. But they didn't know these people. It's a fluke. You know? Not once did anybody get up and ever say this was a covert, sneaky meeting. No one ever said that. No one went out of their way to listen to this. You know, I am tired, and I'm going to tell the truth every meeting until people realize it. Till people realize it.
Thank you, Barbara. Does Steve have something to say in return, or you're good?
No.
As far as that meeting is concerned, as soon as I heard about it, we said, oh yeah, it was probably Director Stanton and Director Clark there discussing the general manager's contract. We had no illusions that there was anything untoward going on as far as them having a meeting in Applebee's. What we question is the fact that they would be so dumb as to talk about members of the community. Now, you're the liability insurance agent here. That should catch your attention more than the fact that somebody in the community might be overhearing what they're saying and listening into their conversation. Doesn't that concern you more? That they would be out in the community and be dumb enough to talk about one of their employees and their employment situation and their involvement in the union? Doesn't that concern you more than that somebody might be overhearing their conversation as a liability agent? Does it concern you?
Just waiting for you to finish.
Go ahead.
Want to interrupt? Does it concern me?
Yes. Does it concern you?
No.
Okay. Does it concern
because,
you? Well, you said no.
Because it didn't concern me because, as I explained earlier, they were part of a subcommittee. They were having a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Everything they said at that meeting is privileged as a matter of law. So even if someone attempted to sue them, the suit would have been dismissed. They were acting within the course and scope of their duties as board members.
Oh, okay.
Just as if they make a statement here at this board meeting, that is also protected as a matter of law. And you can check with Mr. Bigler.
So the fact that they would disparage people in public, and you consider that part of their official duty then? They were conducting.
I'm not considering. It's just. I'm just telling you what it is. It's a privileged statement. I told the board during training. I'm not saying it's right.
So you consider that part of their district business is to go out in public and disparage members of the public?
No, these gentlemen were at. No, they were at a meeting, okay, exercising their official duties.
They were supposed to be discussing the general manager's contract.
So I'll be the first. I'll be the first to say that it was poor judgment, and I know better actually. I don't honestly remember saying disparaging remarks, but sitting in a public place, any public place, that was poor judgment on my part. I'll own that, absolutely.
Okay, let's go on to the next item. When Director Clark asserts that Gerald Lilpop is a domestic terrorist, does that concern you?
Yes, very much so.
Does you think that might be libelous?
No, I think Mr. Clark is doing his absolute duty as a public official in the state of California. Whoa, so you take domestic terrorism, you don't.
I don't think that there's anything to do with domestic terrorism having to do with Mr. Lilpop.
How do you know that?
Well, how do I know you're not a domestic terrorist?
You don't. Mm-hmm. Okay, but
what suspicion would he have?
Pardon me?
What suspicion would he have?
It's a threat. It's not for Mr. Clark to decide whether the threat is real or not real. His duty as a public official, remember, taking the oath of office as a member of this board, he takes the oath as any official in the state of California, as well as federal. Part of their duties is to protect the United States from terrorists, either foreign or domestic.
So he can call anybody he wants a terrorist, huh? Without any evidence,
He heard a threat, what he perceived as a threat.
Well, I heard, Mr. Kerry heard him say that he was going to burn down his house.
Then that is a threat, and that should have been reported.
Does that concern you?
But in this matter, as a public official, what he's doing is passing on what he felt was a threat. It's up to the authorities.
How come it didn't come out for 6 months?
What?
It was 3 months.
3 months.
That I don't know.
The statement was made 3 months before, and then all of a sudden at a meeting, he starts to assert, oh, this is the domestic terrorist we have sitting here. Well, if there was such a threat, why didn't he bring it up before?
And that's what I admonished Mr. Clark earlier. He should have reported it right away.
What was the perceived threat, Mary, that caused you to waste $500 on having a sheriff lean against the wall and play on his cell phone?
I think the issue there was just, again, I'm sitting here and I apologize for the woman's name. The hostility in this room from everybody, I would perceive that as a threat. And I've been here to prior meetings and seen this. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort.
Well,
all of your goals are to make Cameron Park a better place. And in the words of Rodney King, can't we just all get along?
Apparently not.
And so my whole emphasis here is for the budget. I think that is her statement was wonderful. She's here at every meeting. That is public participation. But be a collaborator. Work with the board. Work to solve the problem.
We have no control.
You have absolute control.
No, we don't.
Vote them out of office.
Yeah, we're going to.
Start a recall.
We're trying.
We're going to.
We're trying.
Okay, then that is your role as the member of the public. Get your group together, file the petition, pay the fees, and get the signatures.
No, we'll just keep coming here to every meeting.
So how does that move anything forward?
Maybe they'll change.
All this
Maybe
anger.
they'll change. Maybe they'll see the light one of these days.
It's hard to see the light when someone's pointing at you and blocking the light.
Yeah.
You want to work together. This is a great place to live. This community center is wonderful. I worked with this district when the last center burned down.
Well, that's a fire.
Right, and that burned down. And the goal of the district was to create a center that this community could be proud of. That was the ultimate goal.
That goes back a lot further than when that fire station.
But that was
Bill Soxy, the general manager.
Okay, but
what
I'm saying
you
is,
ever arrived 10 years ago. Believe me, I've been here 25 years.
Okay, but once that fire happened, it moved things forward. That was the genesis to kind of move things forward.
It was the third
Wait a
It was
second,
the
sir.
third
Just let me
bond
explain.
vote that this passed on. And it should
The
have
goal
been
was
years
to
ago.
create a community center that everybody in this area could participate in. That was the goal, right?
Not one that would bankrupt the district.
Well, then it's got to be a collaborative
That's
effort.
the type of things that we're trying to bring to their attention. You guys are
Then how do we get
not
more
right in
events?
the head with your thinking.
Mary calls me and says, Dennis, we want to have an event here. Do we have the coverage for it? My role is to work with Mary to say, how can we make this happen? How can we get more activities in here? How do we do this from a risk management standpoint? And I work with Mary because that's the board's goal. And that's what we're trying to do. So events that are happening, the barbecue,
I
all
want to
that.
discuss 5020. Okay?
502.
5020 is the Cameron Park Community Services District policy on board meeting agendas. Now, I could have swore several meetings ago I heard that that somebody was saying, I think it was she was saying that you couldn't get items on the agenda through the general manager. Is that correct?
Well, I would like Dennis to clarify that as well, that how the board members get agenda items on the agenda. Would you please do that?
So, the whole idea, it's a board action. So, and during director's comments, that is the time for any board member to say, I would like to see A, B, or C on the next agenda. And then it goes to the board, and the board can say, is this something that we want to take up staff's time, board's time to review? If a majority of the board...
That's not how I understand policy now.
Well, I just tell you what the Brown Act talks about.
Well, I've got Cameron Park's policy right here in front of me, and it says any director may call the general manager and request an item be placed on the agenda. Period. So it says. It says the general manager, in cooperation with the board president, shall prepare the agenda, not in exclusion to the board president. Okay. Later in the same policy, it makes the same stipulation in terms of the public being able to request agenda items. And then it says at the bottom of 5020 2.2 that any director may request that the item be placed on the agenda. And the assumption, I believe in the language, is that when a director requests that an item be placed on the agenda, it will be placed on the agenda, right?
Well, no, you said that the general manager has the ultimate say on whether it's going to go.
That's not the way the policy reads, though.
But that's what
Is that their direction
told
you
us.
gave? Because that seems to me what I was told was the SDRMA was saying, oh no, the general manager has the final say as to what goes on the agenda. Huh?
The government code says.
Well, then I guess we better...
So like anything, a policy, at the board's pleasure, the policy can change. So I think that's an excellent point to bring to the board to say, this is a policy we need to review. Let's make sure this is current. Is this what the board wants? How does the board want this to proceed? So I think you bring up an excellent point that this is a policy that the board may want to direct staff to have on the next agenda to specifically address your questions. How does the board want to communicate? When you just said the policy saying any director could call the general manager to do this, the general manager has one boss. That's the entire board. When you see 5 directors calling saying, I want this, this, and this, that's what creates the tension about, well, who is that general manager working for? That's why I was recommending to the board that if a member of the public brings an item to go to the agenda, do it in public comment, let it go to the board, and then what is the board's wishes? Does the board want to review this? Did the board?
That's not even close to how the policy
But that's exactly what I said. That's why the policy needs to be addressed. You're absolutely correct.
But until the policy is changed, the policy should be followed.
The policy should be followed. You're
Just
absolutely right.
to add to that, as of today, any member of the board...
That's the
could have
existing
sent-
policy.
Yes, could have sent an
Oh, yes.
item for
Yes.
getting on the agenda, and that's not a violation of the Brown Act and the policy,
Well,
correct?
because you have a policy. that
Thank
says
you,
that.
Dennis.
So I would suggest then, I'm sorry, your name, sir?
David.
David brought up an excellent point. That's a policy that needs to be reviewed by the board. Is that how you want that communication to flow? And then that becomes a board decision. See, that's what I'm saying. It's a board decision.
The problem with what you are saying that the agenda items go to the board and then gets agendized the next time. We already have a lot of time.
But the board can take it. If you think that an item needs to be acted upon immediately, that becomes, you can ask the board. I'd like to have this placed on this meeting right now because I think this is
Then where
an
does
issue.
the transparency come in?
Pardon me?
When does the transparency come in? We need to publicize our agenda so the public knows
But
what we're talking
but the
about.
transparency is you're doing it in a public meeting, so the public sees you putting it on the
People have to
agenda.
be noticed ahead of time, 72 hours ahead of time. You can't make up the agenda the night of the meeting.
The
You
board
can't do
can
that.
change an agenda item if the board votes on it and says, you bring up something that the board realizes is an immediate concern that should be resolved
Yeah,
tonight.
I believe that has to be emergent. I believe that has to come
It
as
could be an
emergent.
emergency
It is.
situation.
You know that one, right? I've got that in my binder over there. What the definition of emergency is.
Right, and but the board can make a
The
motion.
place is burning down. It doesn't, you know. If you've got some stuff wrong, go do your homework.
I'm going to make a motion. We have a long agenda. I appreciate the presentation. I'm going to make a motion that we wrap up this
Thank you.
now.
Second.
So
So
we have
who's
a
the
motion
second?
Any discussion? This is a presentation, and it's important for the board and the public to know what the policies are, what our responsibilities are, and all in favor?
Can we have a little discussion
Yeah,
about those
sure.
things? We have a couple of members who've been waiting to speak. If we can limit your comments to just a couple of minutes maybe, and that way we can move along.
There's already a motion made.
There's a motion and second, all in favor?
Well, we're still in the discussion phase. I'll just say that it's open to interpretation when it says a director can go to the general manager and request that. It doesn't say it will be on there. The only verbiage you have in there is further on when it says the general manager is a sole, whatever it says. I'm just saying,
Correct.
look at the whole thing.
No, that's not.
Hold on, I can answer this. I appreciate
You're
it.
saying there's
Okay.
interpretation.
If you recall, last time that we were talking about the policies, that part that the general manager has the ultimate decision on what goes on the agenda is not part of our policy, and it's going to come back and be clarified. But meanwhile, every director, including the president, can ask for an agenda item via email, via phone call. Hopefully we don't come to the office and do that all the time. But that's different.
But just to make sure everyone's on the same page, our policy does say the general manager is the final decision maker with regard to what's community.
Public
On
request.
the public, not the...
But it's silent up there as far as who makes the final
You're going
decision.
to clarify that. So any other comments?
Oh, I know, but it doesn't say it shall be placed on the agenda. It says any member can request.
You don't think that
I don't think the language is very clear, and I think that it's open to both sides' interpretation. I think Dennis is right.
Can we talk about that after we get this motion? So we have a motion and a second. We did the discussion. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay. Does it mean that you want to end this right now?
Yes, that was my motion.
See, this is the problem, Dennis. That they shut us off.
I am sorry, but we have to...
And they wonder why the alienation? Because we
I asked for this.
That's fine.
But that's okay.
I
I'm
get
sorry,
paid
I have
either
to
way.
follow
It's the
what
board's
board-
decision.
Yes, I asked.
Can I put a motion in that because the person who asked for this item has questions, we extend this until we hear this, and Dennis is here tonight? I make a motion for that. Do I have a second? For another 10 minutes, till 9 o'clock with that call.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
I tried. I'm sorry. We move on. Financial reports. Dennis, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your